We had a couple of academics on a few weeks ago showing the biology of a male anatomy versus female, and they put forward the research that there is an advantage for a trans woman to compete in lifting, power sports and speed sports against cisgender women. And I was thinking, well, is it that we now go fully accept, fully immersion in every area and acknowledge that there might be an advantage, or is it that we try and make it so there's not an advantage by excluding, and I'll use that term bluntly, trans women from competing in elite sports?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a conversation where it's interesting that we focus so much on trans women in this area, because if you look at like Michael Phelps and the studies on his body, he's a fucking superhuman.
Well, we talked about that. We talked about Caster Semenya, and they're making Caster Semenya drop her testosterone levels. I think that's wrong. Yeah. And that's the exact example I gave. She has a naturally born advantage, just like Michael Phelps apparently produces less lactic acid. So he has a naturally born advantage. I don't think that they should make Caster Semenya drop her testosterone, because that's quote unquote natural, whatever the fuck natural means in this day. But it was the way she was born. But there's a difference. I think there's a difference with that.
This is the interesting thing. Because
I feel like I'm about to be educated.
Yeah, you say it's the way she was born.
Yeah.
Trans people are born trans.
Yeah.
So you have to come from this place of believing that trans people make a choice about whether they're trans or not, to believe that it's not a natural, to believe it's not natural, to believe that a powerlifter, a trans woman powerlifter is somehow different to Caster Semenya, is to believe that she wasn't born trans and she's not a woman.
That's interesting.
And, I think sometimes, like with trans exclusionary feminists, they often will take this approach of believing that men are dressing up as women and calling themselves trans so they can molest children and in public bathrooms, and so they can, as if cisgender men don't fucking do that all the time. There was just a case in Sydney about it, but that's somehow, why would men go through the trouble of a transition to sexually abuse a child when they do that as cisgender men? But it's the same with sport. You have to truly believe that a man decided, I can't compete at this level, a woman decided, so I'm going to transition and live my life this way.
No, I don't think that's quite it, because
so far-fetched.
Yeah, because I agree that I don't think quote unquote men are going to transition so they can be world champions. I don't think that's ever a reason. I completely accept and agree that being transgender is completely
something you're born.
I was going to say the norm. These words get so lost sometimes.
But like, if you believe that you're born this way, in the same way that you're born with a sexuality, if you believe that you're born with a gender, then a trans woman who is an athlete is no different to Caster Semenya or Michael Phelps.
That's the point that's really interesting. I find that really interesting about so what you're saying is, if someone was going to be consistent, they'd have to want to reduce Caster Semenya's testosterone as well as say no trans woman in league. That would be the consistent position.
Yeah, and also it would mean that you are choosing to deny a part of the population the ability to compete or be part of sport. So where does that start? Do we say to a trans child who's 7 years old, you can't play rugby? And if we're going to let that child play rugby or let them start powerlifting as a teenager, even if they're trans, then how come we're going to do that but then say, train and train and train, but when you get to 25 and you get to Olympic level, fuck off because you're trans? What
about this situation that's happening in America at the moment, your opinion on in collegiate sport, because they're teenagers still, not going through hormone reduction, not reducing testosterone, racing against cisgender women? There's these examples about this girl made an article that she finished 6th and the first 2 were transgender females, and if she had finished 4th, she would have got a $250,000 scholarship to this. What do you think about all that stuff?
I think that she needs to grow the fuck up and realise that this is life. be better, work harder. You know,
Yep.
they didn't. I saw that girl, and I just thought, fuck, you need your parents to sit down with you and explain the fucking world with your white privilege and all that. She's going through life going, I deserve this, that, and that. You got beaten by 4 people or something, and you see this all the time in the Olympics. These girls who cry, and they're always white, they're always coming through from a privileged background, wealthy, you know, and it's like, you've had every fucking advantage and you still couldn't do it. Grow up.
Well, they haven't had every advantage in sport, though.
Well, what? They had parents who maybe didn't have both parents working, so could be driven out for hours to go. They had the money to do tutoring, training.
But those
things matter.
But if we were saying that, if you look at things like, I mean, I guess America's more obvious, but, you know, basketball, NFL, dominated 90-10 of black athletes to white athletes. So obviously, what does that mean? That the black athletes are so far advanced that they overcome white privilege to compete in sports? Well,
I mean, I think that the way it's looking at it from a position of black families are all poor or something, which is untrue from a start. But the thing is, white privilege isn't about saying I don't have any hardship or I haven't grown up in a, you know, grown up poor or anything like that. It's just saying that the way that you move through life has less barriers. You know, and the thing that you often see, and like, I don't know a huge amount about sport in the US, so I might be speaking a little bit out of turn, but the way that I understand it is that often scouts will come and take these young men and bring them to another place. So they actually almost get to inherit this through sport. They get to inherit less barriers in that way because they're transplanted into, you know, often being billeted with families like the coach and stuff like that. So I think all of those factors are part of it. And, you know, intersectionality, that type of feminism, which is looking at all those things, how are the ways that my life has benefited from the way that I just innately am, that's always going, there are so many complexities in this and we don't know. And I think sometimes we have this desire in life, and certainly I have the personality that wants this, where we just say, this is okay, this isn't. And it's kind of like, no, it's super complex. But there's some things that I just really believe are quite black and white. And a lot of that is around bigotry.